For Sunday, November 22nd, you found the Georgia gang. And topping our agenda today, the governor says no to more refugees from Syria. The Secretary of State is embarrassed by a data breach, and there's a Robert James fiasco in DeKalb County. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia gang starts now.
And we're glad you could be with us on this Sunday before Thanksgiving. So I guess we can go ahead and wish you a happy Thanksgiving now, because this is the week that was. We're going to begin at the state capitol and the U.S. Capitol. Early last week, Governor Nathan Deal stepped forward and told the President of the United States that Georgia does not want any more refugees, especially from Syria. And Phil, you are our immigration expert, if you will. I think Governor Deal understood what the people of Georgia were thinking about this mess over there in the Middle East.
Well, I think so. When you had the horrific attack in Paris, I think it focused everyone, regardless of their politics, on the homeland and homeland security. And Governor Deal, I think, rightly got the pulse of the people. The national polls show that people want a pause. They want to vet properly. Remember, the FBI director, Obama's own FBI director, says we cannot vet Syrian refugees properly. So you're right. Governor Deal did something, and then if you want to talk about what happened in D.C.,
well, we are.
You've got a lot.
Governor Deal was joined by the end of the week, I believe. 31 governors have said
that's right.
No to Syrian refugees, which did in fact prompt Congress to act. And Congress voted last week, Theron, to pause it and put in rigid controls over the vetting of refugees, which in my mind almost makes it impossible to admit any.
Well, to Phil's point, I mean, listen, we had a very tragic and horrific event happen in Paris, and I know that all of us on the panel want to send our thoughts and prayers out to the families and the victims. However, let's go back for a second. Let's stay on Georgia. I think the person who deserves a lot of credit, and I applaud him for really coming out publicly and doing something that I think a lot of leaders are starting to do across the country, and that's Mayor Kasim Reed, who basically said, listen, of course we've got to look at this closely and make sure that we're doing the proper vetting. However, to not sort of comply to the federal process and the federal plan that the president and this administration and others are working to not just focus on Syrian refugees, but refugees who are coming to this country in the next year. I think he's to be applauded for that. And then I think when we move to what's going on in the nation's capital, you have 47 Democrats vote for this. And so this is something that not only members of Congress, but the American people are very concerned about. However, I think the problem with this is that some people who are running for higher political offices are trying to put forth this notion that it's Christians versus Muslims and it's refugees.
Well,
it's here, and they're playing this sort of political football because the bottom line here is that we're all immigrants, and some of the people who are making some of these harsh comments are actually sons and family members of refugees. And so I think what the president did in a very, very direct way is that he reminded the people that we
come on,
that we heard. No, he did.
The president lost his temper. He got like a petulant second grader.
Well, he wasn't. He wasn't angry.
Didn't behave presidentially at all.
He was not angry at all.
You got guys like Democrats from Georgia, like David Scott and Sanford Bishop,
right,
taking issue with the president on this measure.
Well,
the president, I thought, behaved badly.
Yeah, I think that you're right. They have taken him, and as Theron mentioned, there have been several dozen Democrats who voted along. The question is whether or not we're going to let ISIS win this war of attrition, and it's really a war of values more than anything else. Do we abandon our nation's values and say we're not going to allow widows and orphans, an overwhelming majority of whom? Wait a minute now, Dick. The fact is, 2% of Syrian refugees are men of combat age.
That's not true.
That is true.
False.
2% are men of combat age.
You're pulling that out of thin air.
No, I'm getting it from from the White House and the State Department.
They've never
Well,
Do you
lied.
have
They've
another?
never
Do you
lied.
have
White House
another?
has
Do you have
been there.
another?
Yes, I do.
You have another statistic?
Yes, I
What
do.
is it?
I'm talking for the Center for Immigration Studies. Look
Right.
that one up.
Yeah.
The FBI.
What's the number?
The FBI.
What's the number
I
of men
don't-
of combat
I don't
age
know,
coming to America
but they
from
say,
Syria?
They say that it's far
The
more
State Department
than
says that it's
2%.
Well, let's change.
Well,
let's shift
Plus,
the issue.
neither of you are addressing what's going on in Obama land, this fantasy land, where harsh rhetoric. Come on, people are upset and afraid. We want homeland
That's okay.
security.
You know why they're afraid,
We want to
Phil?
vet them.
They're
We're
afraid
under
because we're
attack.
pandering in fear, and we're trying to win votes based on fear. The fact of
Look,
the matter is, look, these folks
this
who are
is not
coming
about
over here,
widows
the
and
vast
orphans.
majority of whom are women and children, are not a threat to this nation. We've got terrorists here, domestic terrorists. We had one in Charleston. We had one in a movie theater in Colorado.
Do you know that
We've got
women,
them all over there, and
women
we're
are
doing
suicide
nothing about
bombers?
it.
You know,
We're
women are
just
suicide
pandering in
bombers.
fear.
So women are
the
suicide
cowgirl in
bombers.
Paris.
At the end of the day,
He
I know
doesn't
you saw that
understand that.
movie.
He doesn't
I know you
understand
saw
that.
that movie. But at the end of the day, if we change the values of this nation, and I think that that's the president's point, we've lost the battle. We've lost to ISIS. Do we stick to our principles or do we abandon them?
No,
do we
we don't
give them
lose
up
to ISIS. Here's
because
the
of
job.
ISIS?
Here's the job. Take them out.
And scare. And
The
because,
French
and fear.
understand. We got to take them out.
Well, of course
Right?
we have to take them out.
Forget-
but do we have to
But
change?
you want to bring more here.
No,
That makes a lot of
wait
sense.
a minute. Yeah,
Well,
it does
now
make a lot of
politically-
sense
now
because that's what
politically-
we've always done, Phil. When we've
Real
got a
quickly.
war-torn nation, especially when
We're
we're
at
tearing
war.
the nation
We are
apart.
at war. Figure
We've
it out. You know,
Always, we have always allowed refugees.
You know, you-
we allowed Vietnamese
I'm going to
refugees.
make one. I'm going to
into
make
our
one last
country.
point. You know, you liberals go to the same stadiums and the same restaurants and the same events we do. You're going to be under attack the same way everyone else is. You better figure this one out.
What about the people who were in church in Charleston? Were they under attack?
What does that got to do with
It's got
anything?
everything to do with
Got
terrorism.
nothing to do with it.
It has everything to do
Now,
with terrorism.
It has to do with crazy people. That's all. Crazy people. This is a different issue. Politically, I think this helps Donald Trump. I think he's capitalizing on it. I think Ben Carson is hurt by it. Politically, I think this creates a tightrope for Hillary Clinton to walk. What say you?
I think that it helps Hillary Clinton. On Thursday, she gave a very comprehensive overview of what her ISIS policy would look like. It was informed by her experience, which is a lot of these candidates.
She
Donald
caused this
Trump
problem
and
as
Ben
Secretary of
Carson
State.
certainly don't have. She caused this problem.
Sure.
We can say that George Bush caused this problem. We can say that installing the Shah of Iran caused this problem. How long has American foreign policy affected the events of the Middle East?
Well, let me get back to the point of Hillary Clinton. I agree with Jeff. I think that, again, I don't support playing a political football with this very, very serious issue. We're dealing with terrorists, and we're dealing with ISIS, and they are growing. And I do believe the administration is going to work with our allies all across the world to attack this. But
Finally, right?
But they've been doing it, Phil.
Right,
And
very
they
funny.
will continue
Do you believe
to do
that?
it.
You
I
don't
do
believe
believe
that.
that. But let me finish my point, Phil. Don't cut me off. But to Dick's question about how does this affect the people who are running for president, I think it will highlight Hillary Clinton's experience as Secretary of State, because unlike some of the people that you mentioned, Donald Trump and Ben Carson, none of those folks have the experience that she has. Secondly, the thing what you're seeing with Donald Trump, and also let's not forget Jeb Bush. I mean, when he was asked the question, because he sort of implied that we shouldn't let Christian, we got to question people Christianity or let them prove to us that they're Christians. I mean, what kind of questions are that? And so,
that's federal law. When refugees come in, that is one of the questions is to
but how do you
religious
do that,
persecution.
No, but how do you
You're
do that?
screening them
So,
and asking,
but-
do you realize that there is a religion test already by federal
I got
law?
this.
Darren, let me take issue a little bit. I think that in Hillary Clinton's case, she was part of a foreign policy for 3 or 4 years, a foreign policy she did for her boss, Barack Obama, that has failed us in the Middle East.
That's not
ISIS
true.
has grown. The President of the United States called ISIS the JV team. He can't escape the fact that he ignored this group.
I believe that President Obama, like he went out and sought and captured and killed Osama bin Laden, I have every bit of confidence that he will work with our allies across the world to get this done. I mean, and when you go back to those first years, let's remember, to Jeff's point, George Bush had sort of really put the president and his administration in a tough bind. I mean, he had to go right into Iraq. we had the,
Here we
the
go.
rise.
You're blame Bush after
No, I'm
all
not
these
blaming
years?
Bush. I just
That's
think that
ridiculous.
if you
That's
no, I'm not
absurd.
How many
blaming
years
Bush.
is that, Phil? How long we've been
You
over
know,
there
why don't you
affecting
deal-
foreign
it's
policy
been
in the
7
Middle East?
years with
You're talking
Obama
about
world.
Bush.
We
It's
gotta
a heck
get
of a
out.
lot
We
more
gotta get out.
decades longer than Bush.
We got to get out.
How
That's like-
long is our
Listen to
nation's
this.
memory?
What propaganda is
Goodness
this you're
gracious!
now
Where do you come up? Where do you
peddling?
get this stuff?
Obama world.
How long is your foreign
We
policy?
have to get out.
Fantasy
15
world.
minutes?
Jeff, we have to get out. Did President Obama not call ISIS the JV team?
Let me tell you what President Obama
That's all
has
I want to
done.
know, yes or no?
President
doesn't
Obama
want to
did not
answer that.
have 9/11 and the murder of 2,000 plus Americans on his watch.
It could happen. All right. When we come back, we will turn to more traditional state sort of issues, including a massive data breach that apparently wasn't even a breach. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
We've already disagreed on this coming segment even before we began because of my comment that maybe it wasn't a data breach. And so I'll retract that and let the colleagues explain what happened. But at any rate, the Secretary of State, Brian Kemp, acknowledged this week in the face of a lawsuit that disks, including information, confidential information, on every registered voter in Georgia had been made public. At least 12 such disks were purchased by interested parties on voter data that included Social Security numbers. Now, what I said, it wasn't really a breach. What I meant was they got all 12 disks back. But Phil, you jumped on me. You think it's much more serious.
Well, it is serious. First of all, just to back up a bit, the Secretary of State's office announced that an IT fellow made this mistake and he's been fired, so that's good. And yes, they are retrieving these disks and they got them, but unfortunately, and we all know about a disk, I mean, we're talking 1990s technology, but you can copy anything off of that. And they've gone back, the Secretary of State's office has gone back and gotten quote unquote statements from people that nothing was done. But I don't know if statements are good. And they're not even sworn statements, Dick.
Well, at least one of those who received the disc said that he did not destroy the disc, which leads me to believe that he might have just thrown it in the trash, in which case it's out there. The Social Security numbers and driver's license numbers
wait, I thought they
of
were all
6
returned.
million registered voters. At this point in the state of Georgia, you're winner of the week if you're an unregistered voter and your name wasn't on the list. I think that this is despicable,
But
and
all the
somebody
discs
ought to
were
pay.
returned.
And here's the worst part. They didn't let us know. We needed to have a lawsuit by 2 citizens first, and then news reports before the Secretary of State's office took any action at all, including complying with the law that said there was a breach.
Well, it's my understanding, perhaps, that the Secretary of State's office didn't even know there was a breach until the lawsuit was filed.
Well, you know, Secretary Kemp is done a good job as being Secretary of State. However, I agree with Jeff. I think that if you look at sort of the chronological order that the paper sort of outlined of how we as citizens, and I'm one of those 6.2 million registered voters, and all of us at this table are, you know, this is very, very bad for the state. This is something that folks have got to be concerned about. And I think Secretary Kemp has come out and apologized and is taking full responsibility for this. And he's a good man, and, you know, I've known him for a long time from Athens. But I tell you, this goes into another issue of we're about to have some elections here soon. I mean, we're about to have elections in less than, 6 months in Georgia. And so I don't know if voters will have confidence in one, are their votes going to be correctly counted, but more importantly, what sort of type of program or type of structural infrastructure he's going to put in place to make sure that something like this doesn't happen
Darren's
again.
making a very good point, and I think this week will be critical in
Right.
terms of Secretary Kemp's addressing this. But
Correct.
you're right.
Yeah, and I think, look, I mean, Brian Kemp, again, I know he's torn up about this. Look, this is a political show. He's being mentioned as one of the possible people that could be considered on the Republican side to be a gubernatorial candidate in 2018. And so I think he's got to come out. He's got to be very vocal. He's got to be transparent, and he's got to answer some tough questions.
I think he's doing all that.
Yeah, I think he is, yeah.
I'm surprised. I'm generally not that far out of line with you guys, but I'm thinking tempest in a teapot. But you all are taking this very seriously. Let's change the subject to education. Now I'm going to go to Jeff on this because, Jeff, he and I have been discussing the merits or demerits of standardized testing for 30 years. But this week we got the results of the new tests in Georgia, the milestone tests, which are given to 3rd, 5th, 8th graders, replacing the CRCT tests. And the milestone test showed that Georgia children are not doing very well. Gosh, there's a surprise, Jeff.
Well, we knew that the CRCT was not up to par, that it was not testing children at the federal standards, the NAEP standards, the National Association of Educational Progress. This test does. And so the first year or so, we're going to see some lower grades. We're also going to see, as a result of this, I think, some lower graduation rates. In fact, we have recently learned that the graduation rates and the recent bump that we just saw in graduation rates was a result of not having a
graduation test.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so we're going to see that rate probably go down, as well as these test scores. But there is a lot of consternation, as you know, and as we've discussed over the last 3 decades, about how much we teach to the test. And you know, what should we be doing in the classroom? Should we be trying to motivate students to learn in other ways?
I think we need another year to watch these milestones too.
I think that we need time.
Yeah. No, that's why you don't even know how to evaluate them, because they're the first ones to take it. We've got to get out. One quick note, Phil. Georgia and South Carolina have agreed to build a huge new port in Jasper County, South Carolina.
I think it's great.
It kind of fell below the radar, but that's a big story.
It is big, and if you've traveled down there like we all have, I mean, that is a bright spot. Economically, that can only enhance it.
Okay. When we come back, more local news, and we'll focus at the beginning on Robert James, who should resign as DeKalb County's district attorney. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
At the risk of playing real inside baseball, let's return once again to our favorite county, DeKalb County. And let's talk this week about a man named Bob Lunston, who happens to be a friend of mine, full disclosure, who was indicted on 9 felony counts by the district attorney, Robert James. He was accused of misusing his county P card. The total amount involved was $310.96. This week, those 9 felony counts became 3 misdemeanors, community service, and first offender status, so that it won't be on Bob Lunston's record. Robert James, in the meantime, the district attorney, reimbursed the county to the tune of $1,900, almost $2,000, for meals that he misstated. Where is the standard here? Should Robert James not have been indicted, Jeff, for a bunch of felonies by the standard under which he indicted Bob Lunston?
Yeah, the question is, how does the DA indict himself, right? So we need to have some higher power up there, whether it's the Attorney General or feds or somebody else who's looking at this and doing something about it, right? And it was the standard by which the Lunston standard, I think is what we can call it, by which Mike Bowers listed all of these things that he thought were inappropriate, right? Because you had a district attorney who had indicted Lunston on the basis of a couple of $100. I think it was, what did you say? $310.96?
$310.96.
When you know, I mean, it's just crazy. And when you got a DA whose own inappropriate expenses far exceed that, and he's not under indictment himself. As you said at the program, at the beginning of this, he should resign. Yeah. These should be, or the voters should get him out of there.
Hey, Theron, let me ask you this. You're working, pick one of the companies you work for. You take 6 people to dinner in New Orleans, and you expense it.
I'll make sure they're not
cash advance for it. Would you not remember, if the dinner costs a bunch of money, wouldn't you remember who you had dinner with?
Well, let's back up here.
Robert James says he can't remember whom he had dinner with.
Well, let's you know, I always like to sort of bring out facts, and I know that Bob is a friend of yours, and a lot of folks respect him. He's well-known Politico in DeKalb. But I think the distinction here we've got to make sure that our viewers understand is all of the $1,900+ that Robert James had to reimburse the county, which he paid, were all county-related expenses. Okay, the $310.96 that Bob had to go through were all non-county related.
Well, we don't know that,
Right.
actually.
Well, we don't know that. But
Because there were 2 UPS charges. He doesn't remember what they were.
Well, but those facts are going to come out, and so the other thing here is that, and it's to Jeff's point, how do you sort of make sure that a DA or any constitutional officer of DeKalb County is sort of monitored as far as their spending? But I think the deal here is that Robert James did actually report these expenditures because let's face it, I mean he's about to face a tough election next year, and he reported them to the GBI. And the GBI basically.
When Mike Bowers went after them.
No, I think he did it before the Bowers.
If I could
report.
squeeze in a comment, here, there's a bigger picture aside from this valuable exchange. The bigger picture is the corruption in DeKalb County, and the bigger picture is that Robert James is not prosecuting corruption.
Well, see, this is the challenge.
Let me finish.
Okay, well, you didn't let me finish my point, so make sure you give me some time.
And I'm just going to squeeze in one last comment here. But I think that he's got a tough primary that he deserves to lose, and also he never complied with the Freedom of Information request, which is a misdemeanor right
Mike
there.
Bowers asked him for the information.
That's exactly right. And you know who ought to resign too is Lee May, because he stopped the Bowers corruption report. Let's not forget that.
Well, listen, this other thing.
I know he's your buddy.
It's about what's right is right. Now let's just start with the report. No one on this, really it hasn't been talked about that there were things that were in the Bowers report that came back and said they were false. Like this whole assumption or this insertion that Lee May use a county credit card to purchase some type. No one talks about it. So I want to say, don't cut me off, Phil. Phil, do not cut me off. I didn't cut you off. Secondly, when you say that it's just all this DeKalb County corruption, see, that's a term that the Republican right like to use because when there has been corruption in DeKalb, but there are people like CEO Lee May and the Board of Commissioners and folks in this county who are trying to clean up this corruption. So I think when we compare what's happening to Bob compared to what's happening with Robert James. No, but I just think that you got to.
Who's cleaning it up in
you
DeKalb County?
You just got to make sure that we talk about all the facts.
Who's cleaning it up, Dick?
On this show. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that Robert is right.
Robert James was guilty of a racially motivated prosecution. He was embarrassed that the feds took down Commissioner Elaine Boyd and her husband, and he indicted Bob Lunston out of spite and racial animus, and he should resign. All right, we're out of time.
He's been indicting everybody over there. I understand he indicted an employee over $30.
Yeah. Well, he's got to go. All right, I don't say that very lightly or very often. When we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And I've had my say on Robert James, the DeKalb DA, so I'll just shut up for a minute, and I will turn first to Jeff.
Well, thank you, Dick. Well, I guess I could make him a loser, Robert James, along with Johns Creek and the mayor there and the city council for unanimously voting in opposition to MARTA. I don't think we'll ever get over our race class animus in this region, and that's unfortunate because it means that it's going to hamper our progress going forward.
Strange vote and a strange resolution.
Brian Kemp has got to be a loser as well for at least 6 million registered voters. And my winner is April Ross, the assistant district attorney in Fulton County, who is back at work after a tragic shooting of a year or two ago.
By her estranged husband. Phil, go ahead.
I got some winners. I'm going to make those 47 Democrats in the House of Representatives winners that went with a pause for the Syrian refugees, and they put country over party, and I thought that was great. You know who the real loser was last week in Georgia? You remember that fella that was executed the other night? He had one last request. He wanted a 6-pack of beer, and they refused it. That's cruel and unusual punishment.
All right.
Dan, go ahead.
My winner, and I forgot to do this last week, so I will apologize to her publicly, but Doreen Carter won a race out in DeKalb County, House District 92. You may remember her. She ran for Secretary of State, and so that's a really big win for Democrats. And then I want to compliment the Stone Mountain Memorial Association. There was an article that was written by Jim Galloway that said that this board is actually entertaining a plan to create an exhibit to basically highlight the efforts in the hard-fought warfare among 200,000 black soldiers in the Civil War. So
on both sides.
On both sides. And so I think that's another step to try to improve some of the race relations in this state, but more importantly, we've got to tell the true story about the Confederacy and the people
They
who
tabled the King Bell Tower, though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
that's
I
right.
wasn't going to bring it up, Phil, but I know you were. But I think this association is to be commended, and I think this is a step towards trying to do the right thing in Georgia.
All right, I want everybody to vote in this silly contest for a mascot dog for the Atlanta Beltline. It is a cool-looking terrier mix. It's a good-looking dog, and I think we all ought to have a vote in a nickname for that dog. I'm thinking of something like tax abatement, tax cheat, Kasim Reed. What? Anybody got an
Dick,
idea
now
of the
see,
name of
now
the dog?
that's
Name the dog, Jeff.
Name the dog. It's the Beltline mascot. You said it's going to ignite economic growth in Atlanta. Ignite. We'll call the dog Ignite.
Richard P.
Okay, all right. Just the problem is the nickname version of that's not all that fun. All right, Falcons and Colts today. Let's hope the Falcons can get back on track against a Colts team that doesn't even have its starting quarterback. And my loser of this week is President Obama and the foreign policy of Hillary Clinton and John Kerry. It has brought us to a terrible place in this world. See you next week on the Georgia Gang. Happy Thanksgiving.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program